I absolutely have, for the majority of my life, felt very much like gratitude and thankfulness really are the key to peace and joy and happiness. I think that you can't separate the two. And I don't know if you would have lasting joy and happiness without a true sense of gratitude and thankfulness for your living.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila Botello, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to the podcast. I've been looking forward to sharing today's guest with you for a while. You know those people who walk into a room and the mood is instantly elevated and you can't help but smile? Well, today's guest is a natural at this and at making you feel like all your dreams are possible. Eric Bolton is a Canadian performing singer-songwriter and entrepreneur. He owns the music school and studio eBolt Music in Cambridge, Ontario, specializing in music instruction with a team of talented instructors while also partnering with Skytrack Studios to provide one of the top recording facilities in the Waterloo Region. Eric is also the leading member of Ontario rock band Shy Harry. With a passion for community morale and positive growth, Eric further founded Galt Love, a grassroots movement celebrating the Cambridge community, architecture, landscape, history, arts, events, and small businesses. We talked about Eric's musical roots, songwriting, his love of growing community, and what life has been like during a time where live performance hit pause. We also talked about the origin of two of his songs that represent major milestones in his life and being true to who he is. He even performed the two songs acoustically. Our conversation was so rich and infused with a fun, entertaining vibe as well. Enjoy. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheila.
We got to know each other when you began teaching my son guitar around 5 years ago. And it's been so amazing seeing you almost every week since then, first live at eBolt and at your studio, and then over the last year virtually. Anton is one of those kids who I've never had to tell him to practice. He just loves it so much. And I know that a big part of it is because of the influence that you have, your playing, your ability, but also just your personality and your teaching style. It really resonates for him. And I got to say, it's a highlight for all of us now in the family. Even the cat gets to see all of your fur babies at home.
Oh, it's amazing. I can't believe it's been 5 years with Anton. I was the same year that moved the studio downtown Cambridge. So it's really wild to think we've been here for 5 years too. That's crazy.
It is. And there's so much happening there. I do want to get into what your current setup is and all of that. Let's start with a little bit of history. Let's talk about where you grew up and when you arrived in Cambridge. And then also, as I mentioned, you're an animal lover. Please also share about your sweet furry family members.
Oh man, they see so much of me these days. They're probably sick of me. Or maybe they're loving it and never want lockdown to end. Who knows? But I grew up in Guelph and then moved to Cambridge in my grade 9 year. So I was 14 or 15. And that same year, I started playing guitar. And it was all a process of moving. Actually, that started that because my brother Nathan owned a guitar that he never really played. And I was the one who physically carried it in the house as part of the move. And I kind of was just looking at it like, why doesn't he ever touch this? I think I'm going to put it in my room. And then I took it to my room and it just started kind of noodling around. I didn't know what I was doing at all and just fell in love with the sound of it. And then eventually broke a string and thought that was a major repair. And I didn't realize that strings are just a few cents and they're not expensive. So I actually hid the guitar then and was like, I hope my brother never asks me about this. And then eventually I got it restrung and showed it to him. And he was like, dude, you can just keep the guitar. And so then it just took off from there and I have not been able to put it down since.
It's amazing when you think about how some of these chance encounters that really aren't chance after all, it seems, they determine our future steps. I love that story. You're a really well known for also saying share music, share life. And what people may not know about you is that you almost had a different destiny. So tell us about that pivotal moment that you chose music as your life's work.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a passion and a hobby at the same time, but I didn't really look at music as a career. It was just something I loved. And then I was instead always focused through high school on math and science, and I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I was doing all of my like school applications and everything with that in mind, and even went to like a really amazing medical workshop and weekend clinic at Western University and loved it. And I thought that was what I wanted to do. But then through church involvement, ended up going on a few trips to Ghana, Africa. And while over there, I was using my guitar and working with people. And it was so positive and fun. And I never really missed the thought of going to school. I kind of wanted to just keep going back to Africa. Like I was never like wishing I could get back and get started on my schooling. And then it was then at that time that it was a pretty immediate decision. There was no humming and hawing. Just what if I did music came to mind. And then it was just, yep, that's what we're doing. That's the right thing. And I remember walking downstairs to my parents and being like, I just realized that I think I'm going to do music as a career. And they both were not surprised at all. And then they just said, just try not to be a starving artist. And it's amazing because I didn't realize it then, but music was then going to become the biggest connector to every single person in my world now. And it's opened doors of community involvement and help in local initiatives. And I get to meet all these families and all these people. And I just never realized how beautiful it would become in that way.
I've heard it said that when we have a vision for our life, we take steps forward and we never see what the whole vision is. Mm-hmm. But we get little pieces and glimpses, and then it directs a few steps forward, and then you get there, and then a few steps forward. And then when you look back, that's when you see the magnitude of the vision. And that I love hearing this story. And I knew bits and pieces of this. I knew that you were great at math and science. I didn't know the pediatrician part, but you know what? You have such an amazing connecting ability with people of all ages that, yeah, I mean, if you had chosen that, you would have really shone in that career as well. I just think it's really neat how you honored the vision for your life that was given to you when it came, and that you trusted yourself. I'm so glad that you chose music, because I'm glad that you're in our life and that I get to see you shining in all of the things you're involved with too. It's really fun to watch. So what did the development of your playing and performance abilities look like? What was your process as you were honing your craft?
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for all of that. That was beautiful. I love it. I love the people I get to meet, like you and Anton, and it's incredible. Looking back, it's such a beautiful thing. It's like it's this tapestry, like you said, that just you don't even see it being made. Then you look back and you're like, that was awesome. This is awesome. So yeah, like out of my procedure that way. So I guess for me, my world of music is a blend of business and creativity. It's not really, I don't always know what really leads the way. If it's a business thing and like trying to pursue an opportunity, or if it's that there's something that musically I just need to create. I don't always know what's ruling. And I think it's pretty 50-50. There's even times now because of music where I think of opportunities that come up that aren't even music based, but music introduced it. So opportunities in the community that music made the way to meeting these people. But then now what you're involved in is like, fundraising for a hospital or something like that. And it's kind of like, I could see a lot down the road that wouldn't potentially even be music related, but music really started it off. Yeah. I'm trying to think procedural stuff with music, like with writing.
Well, really, when you were starting to get more serious about getting into performing and teaching,
Mm.
did you know what kind of coaching guidance or classes or whatever did you start taking to get yourself started? And then what did your practice schedule look like? I remember it was pretty rigorous.
Yes, that was very rigorous. So once I decided I was going to do music, I wanted to go to Humber for their jazz guitar program because it's very highly esteemed. And my guitar instructor at the time was a grad from that program and would do workshops there. And to this day, he's still just the most fantastic guitarist I know. And so I wanted to do that. So I went for a little mock audition that they were hosting and realized the skill in the players around me there, and that here in Cambridge, I was a good guitarist, and then you go to this hub of great guitarists, and you realize, wow, I have so much to learn, and I left that feeling very challenged, and so I took on. I did audition and I was accepted into their introductory program, but I wanted the main program. So I asked if that was a shoe-in, if next year I would just go into the main program, but they said I'd have to audition again anyways. So then I said, well, I'll save my money and I'll just instead dive into as much practicing as I can possibly do. And then I'll audition again. And I started doing roughly 8 hours a day, and I would keep a practice log. And I was working at a cafe at the time. So I would go work at a cafe, then come home and just play guitar for 8 hours. And then from that got into some teaching that kept me in that world. And by the time it was time to re-audition, I now had all these students that I didn't want to leave. And so I decided to just see where teaching would go with it, and didn't end up going to school, but just stayed on the pretty rigorous practice schedule for a couple more years still. And then teaching just became my full-time career and haven't looked back since.
Again, trusting yourself to try to get curious and not being locked into things having to be a certain way. And I think this speaks a lot to the entrepreneurial spirit that I see within you that has launched your business, launched various other initiatives in the city, and your band and the recording studio that's downstairs. Like all of these different things that you've involved yourself in began from you trusting yourself first. And I love that it's not like it just snap came easy. You put in the work. Like you were so committed to your vision that you would practice 8 hours a day. And that's a lot, like to do anything for 8 solid hours a day. Even in a traditional workplace, at least our tasks are varied. We're doing different things. So that's really great. And I think it's a wonderful inspiration to people who are looking at whether it be something creative or something, business related. Just when you put in the time, those steps that you're taking start to guide you, and if you're headed in the right direction. There's always an indication. So that's a beautiful commitment to your craft. And it shows in your playing. My goodness. And we're going to have you play later a couple songs. I'm so excited to share with everyone. And before we do, though, I'd love for you to discuss your songwriting process. I've dabbled in some songwriting kind of more for pleasure than anything else. And before putting it out there, I'm thinking, okay, well, does this sound like something else out there? I know everything, there's really no new anything. It's all just an iteration of what's already there and adding layers. How do you trust your creativity to write something new and feel, okay, this is authentically new and it's mine? How do you think about that? Or do you even think about that?
I will say I generally, I've had times where, specifically in my younger years, I definitely would second guess that. I would worry. I'd even ask people, does this sound like anything you've heard? Because in my head, I hadn't. And, but I was worried. And you just kind of think about that. And I was learning a lot about music theory and how so many songs are similar. And I wasn't really sure how to be original. And that was definitely something that constantly worried me when I was starting songwriting in my teen years and early 20s. But eventually, I don't know what happened, but that thought definitely just kind of disappeared and started to just go for it and would just write and write and write. And I had like a chapter of life where I wrote all the time. And I knew that I was challenging myself. And I also knew the work I was doing on the guitar wasn't what I was hearing from just any other artist. I knew that I was pushing myself in a way that a lot of my favorite artists, I wasn't really sounding like them necessarily. So I felt like I was branching away from my usual inspirations in a sense, and felt kind of free to just keep writing. But that said, there have definitely been times where someone says, you know what, this song reminds me of this song over here. And it's like someone takes the rug out from under your feet. But it's cool. Like in many ways, there's been times where people have said that, and it's a song I've never heard of or an artist I've never heard of. And it's just kind of coincidence, I guess. But you can't really let it hold you back from just creating. Maybe not everything then gets to go out and be your champion song, but it should definitely not inhibit the creation process.
Yes, I agree. I love that answer. So now your band Shy Harry
Hi, Harry.
has around 8 releases, I think, of various lengths that are out. And so tell me, who's in the band? How did you all come together? And what is next for you all? And then once you do that, I would love for you to play one of your latest releases, That Good Night, for the listeners. And if you want, you can share the origin story of that song too.
Amazing. Okay. Well, so Shy Harry, those boys, they're
They're awesome.
pretty fun. So there's Grant Gimple, who plays bass and does some backing vocals, and Ryan Whitney, who's on drums. He's done backing vocals in studio, and I'm hoping one day there'll be all 4 of us singing live, but we'll see. And then Cameron Earnshaw, who does keyboard and backing vocals. So the 4 of us have been working together as a group of 4 for the last couple of years. However, Grant and I started the band, I want to say like 6 years ago, with a different guy named Jeremy. And we were just doing cover tunes, and then got into more original work. And as we kind of started focusing on original work, Jeremy moved on and Ryan came in and was more kind of a passion for what we were writing and what we were doing. And then Cam came in and filled out the sound, and it's amazing. And so we have a really good time, and we've always had a great performance time together. I think we're a band that thrives in a live setting where we don't do nearly as much studio work, and even when we record, we often record live off the floor, where we're all just set up at once and just click record and everyone play instead of isolating each thing. We've just always been better at feeding off each other's energy. So.
And you have actually your latest release was the Cafe. What was that one called? Cafe 13 Sessions?
Yeah, it was the live acoustic show at Cafe 13 and or local 13 Food and Beverage, I guess it's now called.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so fun. And even that, like, we get more comments about that album than anything we've ever done. And that was like a little live acoustic album. But the energy of being live, I think, is just very different.
And hearing it recorded, because you released that during the lockdown, during the pandemic. So I think at a time where people were really craving live performance and we couldn't go out. So having it playing while I'm cooking dinner and doing stuff around the house is just so energizing.
That's a great point. I don't know if I've properly thought about that. That's a neat perspective. I'm going to tell the guys that. I think they would find that an encouragement. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it is beautiful to get that energy, because there really is nothing like having a room full of people, and where you get to hear people on that album, like commenting or shouting out or clapping or whatever. And it's fun, like getting that sense of a whole room of people together.
Yeah. So tell us about That Good Night.
This song actually started off as just a piano part that Cam had written, and we were up at Ryan's parents' cottage and just having a weekend of writing and music. And Cam just said, "Hey, I wrote this little thing on piano, and maybe we can do something with it." And we all immediately sort of resonated with it, and just being a very peaceful song. But there weren't any words or anything, but we found it just beautiful and meditative. And we kind of all got this imagery out of nowhere of like like a sunset and a valley and like something about it of like this calm space. And so we kept calling it as a working title, just the Valley Song, because it just felt like this peaceful meadow. And we weren't really sure ever what to do with it. And so then this year I wrote a song and put it out under my own name called Genesis. And I think that one might come up later, but Genesis kind of sparked the lyrics for this one. So it's kind of interesting. The lyrics from this one were brought to Shy Harry as a bit of an overflow of something I went through personally. And it just kind of carries, I think, a sense of that peace and calm and a kind of finality, like almost like the ending of a chapter. And so the same way that we kind of thought of it as like the ending of a day and a sunset, and there's this piece about it. So it started that way. So there's much more details to That Good Night as far as lyrics go, but it might be better kind of as a sounding board after Genesis, I wonder. But
sure.
Yeah, it's kind of, let's see, what could I quickly say about the lyrics though? I would say I very much personally had gone through years and years of questioning myself and having a lot of personal doubts and shame that I didn't even really realize was fully there. And then much to do with identity and feeling kind of like I'm not able to really be myself amongst my family and peers in a proper way. But it was so under the surface that I never even realized just the toll it was taking on me. And for years and years and years. And then Genesis is a song that really was kind of the breaking out of kind of realizing it and feeling just like you're breathing. And you kind of think, like, wow, I don't think I've really ever felt so free before. And That Good Night is this like peaceful point where we just kind of look back and think like, wow, like this really is the end of a chapter. And it's kind of just exciting and happy at the same time. So I don't know, when you hear this song, the lyrics might stand out a bit of that, and just feeling free to be yourself and to love the journey you've been on, and kind of just taking a bit of moment of peace, embracing it all.
Wonderful. Ooh, yeah. I can't wait to hear it.
Okay, I'll play it for you. I wish we had Cam on piano here to.
I know. Maybe next time. Let's do it. We'll be having too many laughs.
Oh, he's so fun.
Yeah.
All right, so this is That Good Night. Guess it's over now. Lights in the walls come down. Time was rolling on, and I'm not about that. Seems the world is changing, with the best kind of heartbreaking. I had my doubts about me, but that's enough of that. Don't go quiet now. Don't go quiet now. Keep the light, keep the dying light. Not just a moment, friends. I think we finally made it. With life and love to own. How about that? Now sing as the night rolls over and falls on the face of the old world. With some sort of grace about it, and I'm all about that. Don't go quiet now. Don't go quiet now. Don't go quiet now. dying light. Don't go quiet now. Into that good night.
Ah, that was so good. It is so meditative. I
That's
played it over and over and over because I was really just wanting to captivate the words and just take it in, you know? I love it.
Thank
And you
you.
released this just recently, right?
Yeah, in December. Or might have been the last. Can't remember if it was November 30th or December 1st, but it was right near the end of the passing of those two. And it's funny playing it. There's so much more I feel like I could say about that song. As I was playing it, I was like, oh yeah, this line. Oh yeah, this line. And it's so fun, but it's yeah. So I don't know if what I said before translates a bit more into that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a song of peace. Feeling that freedom and breathing and stuff. But it's interesting. I meant to mention actually the name of it, That Good Night, comes from a very famous poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And the song, like in my head, has always, and I think not just me, but has been a poem, about death and like passing and things like that. And kind of when he gets to those final days, like kind of giving it a fight, and like making the most of your life in those final days. So it's interesting because the song is not at all about a fight. It's about peace. But I still kept thinking of like everything you go to before you get to that peaceful good night, and not going quietly, kind of like making sure to live fully and be fully before you get to that light ending. Yeah. So it kind of was a bit of a blend with that poem at certain points, but to take that name, but it doesn't quite match the poem, but pulled from that idea.
Well, if we could all live our lives with that intent to live fully as who we're meant to be and doing the work we're meant to do in the world, if we were all doing that, imagine, right? That's the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. Thank you so much for singing that. I look forward to the other song too at the end. We're going to have Eric sing Genesis at the very end of the interview as well, which I think you'll absolutely love. And so now shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah.
But really, it's just so connected to this too. What you were just talking about is when I think of you, these are the words that come to mind.
Okay.
Joy, collaboration, celebration of both people and businesses and actually other artists as well, and inclusion. You are the type of person that really reflects to whoever you're with that they're the most important person. I just see that in you. I've truly witnessed your interactions teaching Anton and so many other people as they've popped in and out of the studio, on the street, and even in your IG stories. And your skill and your patience and openness to push the limits of creativity and your compassion in action is really wonderful to witness. I mean, so Anton asks you to teach him Metallica and Bob Marley on the ukulele or the Mario Kart theme song mixed in with some Deep Purple and the Beatles. And you always accommodate him with a, yeah, let's do it. And this is not easy stuff to play, but it's also not easy to translate to a 12, now 13-year-old boy on the guitar to teach him. But your enthusiasm is so contagious. And like I said, we've never needed to remind him to practice. He just loves it so much. So where does your joy and celebration of life originate from?
Oh, wow. That's really encouraging to hear all of that. And I will say Anton is it's very easy to get excited with Anton. He's got so much excitement in himself for what's going on. It's very contagious. But let's see. I've always been I don't know if maybe always is an overstatement, but I absolutely have, for the majority of my life, felt very much like gratitude and thankfulness really are the key to peace and joy and happiness. I think that you can't separate the two. And I don't know if it would have lasting joy and happiness without a true sense of gratitude and thankfulness for your living. I feel like there's, I don't know when it began, but definitely would have been as a kid, a very young age, just felt very connected to spirituality, and very much always felt like there was a bigger picture and a bigger story, and just kind of felt excited by it, and grateful kind of to be able to experience life and do things. And I think that gratitude always has fueled much of who I am. And I think that must just be, the joy must just be an overflow from that. But I'm very grateful to, I've always felt like there's that it is like a bigger story that you kind of just get to be a part of. And there's so many things to celebrate everywhere you turn. And everyone you meet just kind of is like an exciting other part of that story. And I think that I'm not always as intentionally grateful as I should be. There's definitely times in life where you have to kind of look for those things that you're grateful for. But I think there is still this overarching gratitude for life that must just be what people are seeing.
I think so. And I couldn't agree more. Starting with gratitude is always a beautiful place to begin. And I know we've talked before that we have a deep love and respect for Jesus. And I think that that example of how to live, and that is what can overflow into our lives. And I just feel like we are co-creators of our lives, right? We were created so that we could go out and, I mean, look, if we weren't, then none of us would be able to write or play music or create anything. Like, we would not have that ability. So it is so beautiful. We get to be involved in that process.
I love that. That's a neat perspective. I agree. And it's sweet to see. And I love hearing other creatives talk about it. There's something so connecting when you're creating, and it is very much like you're sharing an attribute of something much bigger and much more divine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, as we mentioned earlier, you're very active in the community. And in fact, you created a hashtag #GaltLove. And that's the part of Cambridge that you call home and where your studio is. And those who walk around downtown Galt will see the hashtag on many business doors.
Right.
You collaborate so easily, it seems. How did that start? How did the hashtag start? How did this idea to collaborate with all of the businesses in the community start? And please also share about your involvement with Cambridge. I think it was the Cambridge City Council for the Arts.
There was the Waterloo Region Arts Fund. And and then also the Cambridge, the Downtown Cambridge BIA. There was a bit of work with both. So for me, what it was, I had a studio for 4 years it's close to downtown Cambridge, but a little bit more tucked away. And I was there for 4 years and was preparing to move to Main Street, so right into the heart of downtown. And I always loved downtown. I thought it was just such a beautiful space. And I had met so many great people from being a little bit involved in the business community there, and just saw the camaraderie amongst a lot of business owners, but not enough, like a very social camaraderie, but not enough working together to push the town forward. And unfortunately, at the time, there was a lot of regional news about our little downtown that was so focused on an overrun homeless shelter and just the issues of drug use that come along with that. And it started to be a very stigmatized place. And the news would only capture Galt in a very run down kind of light. And I thought that was just so unfair and incorrect. And the amount of wonderful people I would pass every day on the street, I'm like, this is your home, and this is where we live, and it's being spoken of in a very incorrect light. So I just decided to start a thing called Galt Love, where we just start to celebrate what we love about where we live and push it on social media to make so we could identify this is our town and we'll be the ones to identify it actually. And it was kind of sweet the way the community ran with it, and people just started sharing photos of all the corners of Galt that they just loved visiting, and businesses used it to cross promote and start working together a little bit more. And it was just really cool. And eventually that led to opportunities to work with some regional movements and some tourist movements, and to partner with our Business Improvement Association to try and just keep bettering the downtown and keep doing stuff. And now it's leading to, art installations and things like that. And it's cool to just see beauty build, but all it was about really is changing the conversation and taking some pride and control of where you're from.
It's neat to see when people can come together in a shared vision, how everybody gets elevated.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And I remember years ago reading Malcolm Gladwell, and he would talk about how when one business would do up their storefront, the next business would kind of be like, I better do up my storefront. And then or in like way, when one business or was abandoned and being vandalized, it was like those kind of torn down spaces that people felt you could just run over them. And like, that's okay. It almost like people are already doing this. It's fine. But it seems like the way that you can inspire each other by like one person does something great and you celebrate it, and it kind of makes the next person think I better do it. And you just start to see this building on that, where suddenly the whole energy of the space is changing, and suddenly people want to scoop up the empty spaces and do things that the other person is doing, and it's cool. And it gives people a sense of building a community together. And it's not really about magically making it happen. It's just about everyone joining hands and kind of taking part in a like-minded, good building good.
And that's great to see in these days where right now we're so virtual because we are forced to be, but it's also easy for people to disconnect from people when they're going out and about and just be really focused on go do their thing and then go, but to really connect people, a person with a business, a personality with a business, and what goes into it, and creating a sense of community face to face is really needed. And I feel that in Galt, which is beautiful. So although the live entertainment has shut down this year, you've still gotten out into the community to play, probably on some cooler, chilly times as well. What has that looked like for you?
I'm grateful to have been an artist who stayed very busy throughout this for the most part. Still, for sure, there were some tighter times this year, but for me, I mentioned right at the beginning, music is a connector for me, and it's a road to working with people. And those awesome moments of expression and laughing together with people in a packed space is awesome. And we didn't get to have that, but we still had this internet thing that you could use and still kind of keep that a bit of engagement, and still kind of get the sense that you are with people, even if you can't be in the same room. And so immediately in the first lockdown, that was something that I wanted, was just to keep engaging with people and hearing from people. And I would just do these live online times. And what was really cool from that was other people started paying attention and being like, oh my goodness, so there's this guy that we've never heard of who's making music over here. And my friends keep talking about it. So they started tuning in. I started to see more people tuning in. And then when patios opened up in the summer and some outdoor music could begin to happen, there was suddenly a lot of calls and people saying, like, are you available? We've been watching your online sessions, maybe come do this. And so it started to be that I could be part of just someone who can keep engaging people. So even the city of Kitchener was like, we deliberately want music. And so the city was paying for musicians to come out because they saw the need for that kind of engagement and culture brought to the town. And so stuff like that, people would start to call. So I was kept very busy, just as a musician, but I think more than anything as someone to engage.
That's beautiful. I think it's amazing how creative people can get when they need to. And knowing that during a time like this where, you know, a lot of people's mental health is probably really suffering and has suffered, where do we turn? We turn to creativity. We turn to the arts. It helps us express our emotions. It helps us escape. It helps us hope. It helps us grieve. It helps us strive. So I love that it was the city that was reaching out to do that. Something you think about the
Mm.
city, and you think, okay, they're just all about you making sure the traffic lights work and there's good municipal water, but really they know it. The city is the people, and we want the people to thrive. I love that you were able to do that.
It was an honor. I was so glad to do it.
So, what is next for you, and what's lighting you up the most right now? Please also share where people can find and follow you and buy your music. We've got it all downloaded on iTunes, and we're grateful to be able to listen to it as often as we want there. And then I would love for you to sing us out with your solo release, Genesis. And I understand, as you were mentioning, that song has a really deep meaning for you.
Man. Well, I'm definitely most active on the Instagram machine, and I am actually going to be doing a bunch more live online sessions in the next month. I'm excited. One thing that I started doing late 2020 was getting a little bit into interviewing. So it's interesting to kind of even just have a conversation like this to kind of keep the wheels turning for me. I've always been someone who tries to organize live music around our town. So the thought of facilitating opportunities for other artists has always been a big part of my role. And I started to think of how that could maybe grow more. And I started thinking, what if I got into a position of also interviewing artists and having them tell their stories and doing things like that? So I did a little bit of that. And now I'm using the live online times to also practice it. And so each live online time now won't just be me. It'll also be with some sort of guest, and maybe a musician, maybe not. And so I'm excited to kind of in this year learn how I could broaden the world of collaboration and conversation in the arts. So that's what's exciting me very much this year. And along with that, I'm releasing a lot of music this year. I'm putting out 4 little EPs of songs I've loved covering for years. And each one's going to have its own little flavor. So the first one we recorded, and it's like before, and it's coming out in the next few weeks. And then it's going to be kind of almost seasonal releases. And then I'm also putting out an EP of original music later this year. And my band is for sure going to be doing more music this year as well. So there's lots and lots to look forward to and work on this year and just keep growing.
That's awesome. I so look forward to it.
And I guess, I should have said it's all Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, all of that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And then, Genesis, this song. So to get, I even know we messaged before and I wasn't really sure how much to really say, but I think I would actually be doing this song and myself a disservice and kind of not honoring it at all if I didn't just be honest about it. But it's this song. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but
That's totally cool. Just share from your heart. We got time.
Okay. Well, this one's interesting because That Good Night is kind of like chapter 2 of it. So people should go back and listen after this to That Good Night. So for me, I grew up in the church and was even a preacher for a long time, and loved God and loved, and like would work so hard and try to do things. But all the while, I had very much a huge wrestling of within myself, not even with God, just of my own sexuality and identity, knowing very much that I was a gay man who was growing up in the church and very much told that that was not a thing that was okay, and that it was one of the greatest of sins and one of the worst things. And there you are trying to just do right and follow, and everywhere you kind of turn, you're kind of even though no one knew, like I was very much closeted, on the schoolyard, one of the greatest insults was to call someone gay. And then in church, the worst thing to be was gay. And so you just kind of grow into this sense of like, well, I'm absolutely never telling anyone about this. And you also think, you start to think like, what does God really want for my life? Like, and then people would have these things. Well, I guess you're called to just kind of be a priest, like, because you're obviously going to just live an isolated life. And that was what it would be taught. And it builds a complex in your head of intense shame and intense confusion as to where you're supposed to go. And as I got into my late 20s, I kind of couldn't do it anymore. And I had a bit of a mental breakdown and realized like that it just enough was enough kind of thing. I couldn't really keep that mindset much longer. And again, all the while, I felt very much like me and God understood each other. Like, it didn't really feel like I was wrestling with God. I felt like it was just all the barrage of things around me all the time. So I kind of just amongst my closest friends would discuss it, and kind of just became a bit more okay with who I was. And then back in May, my dad messaged me out of nowhere and just kind of asked about what's my game plan here, and never really, but he still wasn't really addressing it. And I had told them 6 or 7 years ago, and we never spoke about it again. So it was really out of left field that he emailed me, and also very surprising. He was like, "Why aren't you preaching anymore?" And it was like, "Oh, Dad, there's a lot more to this story that you should be asking about." So I decided to just be a bit more bold than I ever had been. And I just said, like, this was the reality of like what I constantly went through and how unhealthy it was and how it took a toll on me. And I'm like, I can't just keep doing that. I can't just dive back in and as though there's no issue here. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then, it just sparked like a conversation that should have maybe happened years ago. And I kind of, to be honest, like so badly in ways wish my parents had addressed it more when I brought it up years ago, and had like been more of a conversation. Instead, it was like I shared a secret that we just won't tell people about, and like almost like they're now in on the secret. But I'm really grateful though, like, because I also realized that I wasn't in myself in a place where I was ready to have the conversations either. I was glad to kind of finally be like, you know what, let's do it. I like, early 30s now, let's just have this conversation and go for it. It was a very emotional time. And so anyways, all this said, May was crucial because it was a Sunday that I had a big, just emotional night of thinking like, wow, I just kind of put it all out there again to my dad on email of all things. And just felt like I defended myself for the first time kind of in my life. And it was a weird feeling to be like, at first I just felt so scared and vulnerable about it. And I went to bed just in tears. Right. And the next day, so this was just last year, then the next day I woke up and I had this levity and this lightness about me. And I was like, whoa, like, this is a different feeling. And then I realized that sense of like actually just standing up for myself a little bit, and then not against my dad, but like almost like speaking my truth and my cause, was so wildly freeing. And so I went to bed, like kind of like unsure what to do about that intense emotion of everything that just happened. But I woke up the next day feeling lighter than I've ever felt, kind of like, why didn't we have this conversation years ago? And the words that immediately came to mind are like, I'm breathing. Like, what does life look like now? Like, this is kind of interesting. And amazingly enough, that day was the same day. So I started writing, where do we go now that we're breathing? And so I started writing the lyrics, and that's Genesis. So the sense of beginning. Yeah. What does this mean so I started to realize the burden I've been carrying my whole life. And, but that same day that I wrote those words down ended up being the same day George Floyd was killed. And
Wow.
the whole message the rest of that week was, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I literally just on Sunday, Monday, like had a huge conversation and then started to get the sense of like, wow, I'm actually breathing after years and years of not. And now in the news, the topic of racism and that George Floyd was a symbol of like all the people who can't breathe and are like suffocated. So it was kind of like very empowering to kind of keep writing that song, even though it wasn't about racism. In my case, it was about being still proud of who you are, even though you still have no idea what the future holds. So I'm still not quite sure what my relationship will look like going forward with the church and everything. I'm still not sure. I haven't sorted that out. Mm-hmm. But that was the question of where do we go? But the beautiful thing is that there's this sense of shedding of shame and shedding of who you are and who you were trying to be, and instead just being true to who you are. And so this song Genesis, after that whole long rant, was very much a huge step in just owning self and celebrating self, and for the first time kind of having a little bit more pride in who I was and not feeling the need to constantly put defense mechanisms up. And and then since then, it's been like this crazy year of mental health incline. I can't believe the amount of like people have said even like, you're laughing more. And I already laughed a lot. So it's kind of a problem. They're like, people have said like, you're laughing more. A couple of people commented like, you just seem very happy. And I'm like, I think I was subtly depressed for 31 years. It's like, so it's just a very intense song. So for me, this song is very much a joyful new beginning that then was followed by That Good Night as like a peaceful calm about the end of a chapter and the start of something new. And that's a whole rant.
Oh, I'm so happy you shared that. And I'm so happy that you have found the peace that you needed, that you didn't even know that you needed, but I'm so glad that you found it. I really, really believe, like, again, as a Jesus follower, my role is to love as I've been loved. And if we can all do that, then people's fears of how they're perceived can be gone. So we can just go out and live the way we're supposed to live. I think that's been the issue all of these years, for generations, centuries, the fear of man's judgment and patriarchal order and all of those things. And at the end of the day, we are all designed as the humans that we are. And we need to show up and display that. And I think you've done that really well in all the time I've known you. And now since you sharing this revelation, I never would have known that you were struggling. Like you say, you didn't even know that you were struggling with a mild depression for all those years because you show up with so much joy. I'm so glad that you get to live fully into that now.
Thank you. It's exciting. And I've been chatting with people who share similar experiences. And I'm trying to actually almost title this chapter of life, and I haven't landed on it yet. I'll definitely let you know when I do. But it's a process of relearning things and unlearning some things with a new perspective of, hey, why was I doing it this way? And there's so many things that were built into the way you do life that are also subtly trying to protect yourself. And it's like, why do I do the things this way? I could be doing it this way and be more true to who I am. And maybe I'm just going to do that. And you start to do it, but it's really cool. But even I told a couple friends that you had asked if I would play these songs on here and explain them. And I even told them, like, I told you, should I tell the full story? Like, I even asked you, should I do that? And then even in doing that, though, it was kind of eye-opening that was me yet again wondering whether I should dumb down my story. And it was like, maybe, or just go for it and maybe stop worrying so much. And this is what this song and this chapter is for, is of having that freedom to live authentically. And then the people you love in your life, having those conversations so that you can give each other that freedom. And then work other things out after that. Like other stuff can come later. But so I guess I should play this song and stop talking about it. But this song is Genesis, and it doesn't have to be just about my story. So I hope it is a similar kind of freeing song for everybody. silence, with half a home from the start. Of a no-color quiet that was never really us, that would never be one, that could never be love. Where do we go? Oh, where do we go now that we're breathing? Where do we go? Where do we go now that we're free? With our fires and disguises, with half a hope in our hearts, but the lights getting blinding, more than ever alive and more than ever be one. Let there be love. Where do we go? Where do we go now that we're breathing? Where do we go? Where do we go now that we're free? Yeah, where do we go? Oh, where do we go now that we're breathing? Where do we go? Yeah, where do we go now that we're free?
That was so good. That is such a freeing song. And I think truly anyone going through anything can relate to that in some kind of way in their life, something that they've experienced that has stopped them from showing up truly as who they're meant to be. And I'm really glad that you've taken the time to explore this and you finally trusted yourself to move forward because now you get to live the way you're meant to be living. Fully and feeling the way you're meant to be feeling too.
It's such a beautiful thing. And then to think of the sooner we do that for ourselves, the richer we live and the more we could maybe do for others. You never know where it's going to go. Yeah, I wish that for everybody.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been on an exploration of looking at how I've done things and my belief systems and the things that I've gone through my life and not questioned. And I think that God's bigger than all our questions. I'm on that journey too. Becoming a parent, the questions come up from your kids about, well, why does this happen? Why does that happen? And if we're not questioning those things and we're just going about life as usual, then old structures that are destructive just stay in place. So having them questioning and as kids just moving from a love ethic because that's all they know is beautifully defining as well.
Wow. I totally agree. It's something that I love to watch. And I mean, I love seeing your relationship with Anton and Dante. It's beautiful. I always very much felt, like I had a really great relationship with my parents, but there was always that thing that you felt you couldn't really just talk about. And it's kind of beautiful to keep that open space for people to just discuss and and have conversation and question things and grow together. It's amazing. Like even in myself, I've seen the way things don't happen overnight. And if you're at least giving that space for people to grow and the grace for people to grow, both for yourself and for others, like amazing things can happen. And no one needs to be sitting there in quiet and loneliness when you have a family around you or friends around you who are just, let's talk. you know?
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with me today, Eric. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited about the contribution that you bring to the airwaves and to all of our lives and our community.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a really beautiful time.
Friends, thank you for listening. Please find and follow Eric at the places linked in the show notes. We would love to know, what creative pursuit are you being nudged to try? If you'd love to learn an instrument or to sing, you can learn virtually right now at eBolt Music. Please let us know by screenshotting and sharing this episode on Instagram at Sheila A. Botello and at Eric_Bolton with your favorite takeaways from our conversation. It's a beautiful way to say thanks to Eric for being here today. See you next time. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.